It's been obviously such a weird week preparing for week 17 fantasy football that the kicker video was originally not going to come out until Friday. Well, I got a lot of comments on my previous two videos asking me, we need the kicker video on Thursday before Thursday night football. I'm a man of the people, and not only am I the only fantasy football YouTuber who does weekly kicker rankings during the fantasy football season, the top 32 is on Patreon. So become a patron member today to see the top 32. But as always, you are always going to see the top 12 kicker rankings for every week, and that's what we're doing today. Today, I'm going through the top 12 kicker rankings for week 17 fantasy football. And like I said, I'm the only fantasy football YouTuber who does kicker rankings on a weekly basis. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Let's go ahead and dive right into it right now. So nothing changes here. Brandon Aubrey for me is top dog. And it really doesn't matter too much what the matchup is, although I do really like these competitive matchups they've been in lately. Because Brandon Aubrey this week, he's taking on the Lions on Saturday night. And, last week he wasn't the kicker number one. But that was because there was a lot of kickers who scored up to 20 points. I mean, it was a good kicker week last week. So Brandon Aubrey still came out with like 9 to 10 fantasy points, depending on your format. Aubrey was still a stud. And he's the only kicker on this list who's averaging 10 fantasy points per game. It's crazy what he's able to do. So this particular week against the Lions, I think that this is going to be a pretty hard-fought matchup for Dallas to go out there and win. The slide that they're on is really discouraging from a real-life perspective and also fantasy football-wise as well. It's a little discouraging what they're doing right now. So I do have some concerns with this Cowboys offense, but I still do believe Brandon Aubrey is at number one. Jason Sanders and Justin Tucker at 2 and 3 taking on each other. I mean, this is a great matchup, and I think that this is the part where I need to admit that I've been wrong about Jason Sanders for a couple weeks now, really. Jason Sanders, the thing about him, and the reason you don't see him, except for I think 2 or 3 other weeks during the season inside the top 12, is because you could see the massive difference in extra points kicked versus field goals kicked. Well, at the beginning of the year, for about the first 2 months of the year, it mattered a lot. But this last month and a half, Jason Sanders has done well. And I should have identified that faster. This week, though, if he's on waivers, pick him up and play him against the Baltimore Ravens, because look at what they did last week against the tough defense versus Dallas. Well, they won the game, obviously, but Jason Sanders had like 20-plus points in fantasy. That's what they're going to do against the tough defense again, I think, against Baltimore. And Justin Tucker, I mean, he almost eliminated me out of one of my dynasty leagues. Luckily, I was able to get to the championship round. This isn't about my situation. The point being that Justin Tucker is a great fantasy kicker right now. He's averaging just under 10 points a game. And you can see those misses right there, 6 misses this year. Most of them came in the first half of the season. He has done so well in the second half of the year. He's been consistently inside the top 6 lately. And he finds himself there again at number 3 this week against the Dolphins. Jake Elliott at number 4. Jake Elliott this week taking on the Cardinals, and I think that really Jake Elliott's story is very similar to a guy like Justin Tucker's. Because when I look at Jake Elliott, the beginning half of the season, this offense was scoring a lot of touchdowns and not kicking the field goals that much. And it worked out really good for him in the first half. Well, he kind of had a bad stretch for a couple weeks in the middle of the season. I mean, he's rebounded to do very well past several weeks. Jake Elliott's averaging over 9.5 fantasy points per game. Jake Elliott's a great kicker this week. Against the Cardinals, I do worry, like maybe they'll have their way with him, but at the same time, I'm like, this offense hasn't done well anyways over the past month. So maybe they didn't do great against the Giants. That's a divisional matchup. It's a little different, but who's to say that they're going to come out do well again this week? I got Jake Elliott at number 4. And Jason Myers at number 5 with the Seattle Seahawks. Taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers in Seattle this week. Listen, Jason Myers averaging over 9 fantasy points per game. His only problem this year has been 7 missed field goals. That is a problem. No question about that. Don't let that get lost in the sauce. Like, there is a problem there. And that's why I always am reluctant to rank Jason Myers so high. The good thing about it is that he's just on an offense that is so geared for fantasy success for a kicker. This offense gets you down there with all the talent they've got. Jack Smith-Njigba, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker. Then it stops at the quarterback's feet. Whether it's Geno Smith or whether it's Drew Lock, right? This offense is just not efficient always getting in the end zone. So Jason Myers at 5 against the Steelers. I think the Steelers are bad again this week, and Jason Myers takes advantage. Riley Patterson. Do you remember this name? At number 6. Riley Patterson used to play for the Detroit Lions at one time this season. And in fact, he was inside the top 12 rankings for a couple of weeks early in the season. Well, he's had his struggles. He got cut by the Detroit Lions. And now he's a Cleveland Brown because Dustin Hopkins is not playing tonight. And of course, Cleveland is taking on the New York Jets tonight. I think the matchup is great. They're going up against a defense that is very talented. And Cleveland's offense isn't always great at punching it in the end zone. Now, you think over the last several weeks, they've hit big plays with Joe Flacco. Big plays to David Njoku. Big plays to Amari Cooper, right? But once they get down there, if they can't hit a big play, they're not going to just drive the ball, for 12 plays and 6 minutes and, for 85 to 90 yards. That's not how Cleveland's offense is built. They're built on big plays. So if they can't hit those against the Jets defense tonight, Riley Patterson's going to be put in a lot of good situations. 37 field goal attempts this season for him. That was on the Detroit Lions. Well, that's a very similar story to how Cleveland's offenses went. So I like Riley Patterson tonight. Chase McLaughlin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, taking on the New Orleans Saints. So Chase McLaughlin, I think that the thing about this one is that Chase McLaughlin is just on an offense that's peaking at the right time. This offense has done so well over the past month, and they're very similar to Cleveland in a lot of ways. They're going to hit big plays, not always going to get you to drive for a long drive and then punch it in at the 3-yard line. That's not really how Tampa Bay's offense worked most of the year. And that's why Chase McLaughlin has rebounded and he's averaging over 8 fantasy points at this point. That's a good number for Chase McLaughlin to have. So I like Chase McLaughlin this week against the defense that it's failing. New Orleans defense is failing. It's a division matchup as well. I like those matchups. Miami Fairbairn, speaking of divisional matchups, taking on the Tennessee Titans this week in Houston. Miami Fairbairn came out of his injury in week 15 and lit the world on fire. From a kicker perspective, of course. But he had 17 fantasy points in that week, and then he followed it up with a bad performance last week. That's how it goes when you play a tough defense. But what's ironic is that week he came back was against the Tennessee Titans in week 15. Can he do it again? I think he can. Now we've got news that CJ Stroud is looking like he's going to come back too. Get them in more positions against a divisional opponent. I like Miami Fairbairn again. It's a risk for sure, just based on how many times this offense can get in the end zone. I'll take the risk here because I think the upside is really high in the divisional matchup. Cairo Santos at number 9. Cairo Santos this week taking on the Atlanta Falcons in Chicago. Weather's always going to be a factor when you're playing in Chicago. And that's why Cairo Santos has had a mostly average year. The past month to month and a half, he's had several good games, leading him to about 9 fantasy points. The bottom line here for me is that this Bears offense is playing so well. They're getting Santos in position to make a kick. So it's I kind of like this guy actually because he's only missed 4 kicks this year and he's kicking just as many field goals practically as he's kicking extra points. Everything lines up here. Against the Falcons, bad defense, offense is hitting a lot of times. Again, similar to Cleveland's offense. Similar to that Tampa Bay offense. Big plays, not always going to drive the ball. down the field and then put it in at the 3-yard line. I like Cairo Santos this week. Lucas Havik, I think it's third straight week on these rankings, at number 10, and the Los Angeles Rams are taking on the New York Giants in New York. So I think that Lucas Havik is in a situation where he's in a great offense. Honestly, like if it was a different kicker, he'd be higher. Lucas Havik has issues kicking the ball, though. I mean, there's no question. Dude got to sign on to the Rams mid-season, and he's already missed 6 kicks. It's not good. He doesn't look like he has much of a leg, and it doesn't look like he's super accurate. And there's been talk about the Rams moving on from their kicker. Now, they're saying they're not going to. I don't think they're going to before the weekend. But what I am saying is that you look across the league, there's been kickers like Jacksonville recently did with Brandon McManus, where they get into a game and he's missing kicks, and they're like, this is such a close game, we're just going to go for 2. I could easily see the Rams doing that. So that's why there's risk there attached to Lucas Havik, and that's why he dropped this week, but I still do like the offense he's on and the opportunities that he does get. That's why he's at 10. Michael Badgley of the Detroit Lions. Yes, taking on the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's a great matchup. And I think that Detroit's offense is really, you could see on the screen, Michael Badgley has only played a couple games, and he's already kicked 10 extra points and only 1 freaking field goal. That's the problem that the Detroit Lions kickers have had all season. They also haven't played many Dallas Cowboys defenses. They just haven't. So I think that this matchup actually is going to serve as a really good thing for Michael Badgley, who's going to get a lot of field goal opportunities in this game. And, whether or not he makes them all, that is definitely up for question because the guy's bounced from team to team. I think he's been on 3 teams total this calendar year. So it's not a great thing, but the opportunity, I do believe, against the Cowboys will be there. And then Younghoe Koo, rounding it out inside the top 12, taking on the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Again, weather's a factor in Chicago, always. Younghoe Koo is hit or miss. That's because the Atlanta offense is hit or miss. I think that Atlanta's offense can get down there several times this week. And if they do, Koo has been mostly good. I mean, he's four missed kicks total. Dude's kicked a 54-yarder. He's a good kicker if he gets an opportunity. The problem is, how much do you believe in this offense this week? That's a dice roll you're going to have to assess and take yourself. The best thing I can say about it is the offense has been very inconsistent, but at times like last week, it put him in a great position. Can he do it again this week? I lean yes. That's why he's inside the top 12. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for Week 17 Fantasy Football. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings for Week 17 Fantasy Football, click on this video right here and join Patreon today to see updated kicker rankings throughout the week and get the full top 32 kicker rankings for Week 17.